Good afternoon, everybody. I am Erik Sandoval. It is roughly 12:35 in the afternoon, and you're watching Take Six. This is a moment we take in the day to just sit back, relax a little bit, maybe enjoy your lunch with us as we go through some of the day's headlines and some of the big stories that we're covering, and just really take a more comfortable look at it. Today, one of our News 6 reporters, one of my favorite News 6 reporters, by the way, Erik von Ancken, is taking a really in-depth look at something that you may not think about. You know, Erik, when was the last time you were on a cruise?
Over Christmas, Erik. But the funny thing is, before that, it had been years because
Really?
of course, the pandemic. And then, just never got around to doing it. Prices were
Yeah.
so expensive. So we finally decided over the holidays, we're going to do a short 3-day cruise. But
Yeah, and I did a 7-day cruise last year for my birthday. And again, it was the first time in a long time. But when you take a cruise, you really just don't think about who's keeping you safe when you're coming in and out of port.
and it's funny you say that. I mean, that's really what this story is about, right? So what the way that this unfolded, the way that we came across this idea with the Coast Guard, is they had put some information out about Port Canaveral and a brand new building, a multi-million-dollar building, as I guess
Hmm.
they all are these days, a facility that had been, I want to say, like 5 decades in the making. You're looking at it right
Wow.
there, that building. They were in an old building, Erik, to the point where some days they didn't have air conditioning because it just broke.
Oh,
And it got to the point where the Coast Guard, at the federal level, said we got to take care of these folks at Port Canaveral because, of course, they take care of the people in Central Florida. So
hmm.
they built them this new building. So when they first put out their press release to the news, they said, "Hey, come check out our building." And I started asking questions, and they said that their MSU, their Marine Safety Unit, is housed there at the port. Now, to be clear, that's something different than the port uh, Coast Guard patrol, right? So you see,
Okay.
when you think of the Coast Guard, you think of boats. You think
Yeah.
of these big orange boats. You think of helicopters. If you've taken a cruise, you've probably seen the Coast Guard boats alongside the cruise ship, kind of escorting you in, out,
Right.
and just hanging out there to make sure that nobody goes near the cruise ship who shouldn't. That is different than the MSU. So they
Okay.
explained to me, you see this book that this young lady's opening. She's actually the commander of the station. And that in that book is just some of the stuff that their inspectors have to learn. And so it's a
Just
team of
some. That was
inspectors
a big book.
and Erik, there were a ton of books on all of the shelves inside the MSU portion of this new building, the Marine Safety Unit. So who these folks are, the men and women who check every single ship, like that Disney ship you're just looking at, like all
Yeah.
of the cargo ships you were just seeing in Port Canaveral. They check them inside, they check them outside, they check them underneath, because it's not just the patrolling, right? So the other part of the Coast Guard we were talking about, it's the people who ask the hard questions. It's the men and women who ask the hard questions of these crews who come in. So just take a cruise ship, right? Hey, you have close to 10,000 people on board this mega ship. How are you going to get them all off in case there's a life-threatening emergency, in case there's a fire? How are you going to put that fire out? Now, of course, they're supposed to have answers. And if you're thinking of taking a cruise in the next few days, trust me, these cruise lines are really good at doing these drills, having answered these questions. And they, by the way, they rehearse these drills over and over again, especially when a cruise ship is in port,
Hmm.
and then most of the passengers get off. Sometimes, if you stay on board, you'll hear over the loudspeakers that they're doing these drills. But the Marine Safety Unit of the Coast Guard, Erik, is there to make sure that they know exactly what they're doing to protect you, and to make sure that they're good at what they're doing.
So, what kind of access did you get for this story, Erik?
So, um, first we were thinking when we were setting up the story, Erik, that maybe we were going to go on board with some of these inspectors, right?
Yeah.
And then The problem logistically is that's very difficult, especially if you go on a cruise ship, because typically the cruise ships in between one sailing where people are getting off and then they're preparing hours later to start letting people on.
Yeah.
There's just a whole lot going on there. But more than anything, we realize the story is about the men and women who are doing this.
Yeah.
So the Commander Brennan invited us inside that building that you just saw in the video, and introduced us, gave us access to these inspectors who are doing the inspections, and gave us a taste. Just the book you were talking about, flipping through some of the stuff. Marpole is one of the books she pulled out. So that's
Okay.
the marine pollution handbook that they have to be familiar with. There's all
Wow.
kinds of handbooks for, evacuations, lifeboats, fire,
And they have to know all of
propulsion.
this to keep everybody safe. Do they have to commit it to memory, or can they just flip through the book if something comes up?
So 2 points. That's exactly what I said to her. I said, if you don't know what they're supposed to be doing, how do you enforce it? And she said, exactly right. The second thing is, as far as memory, she said that we enjoy just, I don't know if commiserating is the right word, but sitting around with these books and the team when somebody comes in from an inspection and says, so, this seemed a little bit strange, or something I'm not totally used to seeing. And so they'll pull out the books and they pull in the rest of the staff, and they make sure that they're right, that they're on point.
And it's a learning moment
Another
for
thing,
everybody. That's great.
ex- sure. Another thing that photojournalist Jeff Seeger's next to me here in the truck, or if you watch their Getting Results at Home segment, the crafty cameraman, Jeff, he just pointed out that one of the things that these inspectors do is manage all launches from the Space Coast. We're talking about rocket launches, right? So
Wow.
their specific skill set is protecting the people on vessels who may or may not be below the trajectory of these rockets sailing below. Remember, a few years ago, I think you were part of this coverage too, Erik, is a cruise ship got in the way
I
of
remember
a
that.
rocket launch
Yep.
trajectory, right?
Yep.
And again, it wasn't just any ship. It was a Royal Caribbean cruise ship with thousands of people on board, and it caused the launch to scrub. Now, you don't ever want to cause a launch to scrub because, there's heck to pay.
Yeah.
I mean,
Not
in
good
many
PR.
cases, literally,
Yeah.
exactly, all around. But the reason, ultimately, and we make this point in the story, is that if a ship or a smaller boat has people on it, and it's in the keep out zone, to where if a rocket goes wrong, if it explodes, it's not just the debris from the rocket, but there are chemicals on these rockets.
Uh huh.
They have to either get that boat out of there or stop the launch. So you have 3 members of that Coast Guard special unit, the MSU, being in this room, the launch control room, for every single launch that goes up from the Space Coast.
And there's been many of them this year. That is not a light job for anybody.
That's what they're figuring out. So the MSU is expanding. The reason,
Wow.
part of the reason the building was built is because they need the space, they need the
Yeah.
manpower and the woman power to get more people, because more is happening on the Space Coast in Central Florida. The port is growing. We were the first. We go back and forth with Miami. Last year we were the most busiest by volume cruise port in the world. Now we're the second busiest, but that could change in a matter
It's
of
a
months.
horse race. Yeah.
And Erik, I'll leave you with this. So, what really shook us, I guess, woke us up about what they do and how badly they're needed. So the commander, you'll see in the story, takes us into the room, and in the video, she picks up. We were rolling this video throughout our conversation here. She picks up a little. Looks like do you remember a pager? I don't know if
Oh,
you're old
oh
enough to
yeah.
remember
Oh, you
pager.
flatter me.
I didn't
Thank
want to
you.
speak for you. I didn't want to speak for you.
I know
I,
what a pager is.
it,
I remember them.
it kind of looks like a pager, except it's a rad right here.
Ah, there it is.
It's a rad detector. I said, what in the world is a rad detector? She said, I'm sorry, radiation detector. I said, what
Wow.
what do you need a radiation detector for? And she said, because of what might be on any of these vessels that come in. Again, lots of cargo ships,
You
right?
just don't
And
know.
I and it hit me, and you'll see this in the story. It hit me. I said, wait a second, Commander. You're saying that part of what you do is not just checking out the lifeboats and ensuring fire drills. You're saying you're protecting our port and all of Central Florida from things that may come in on ships that we may not know about, like things that have radiation. She said, absolutely. Weapons, possibly, that they haven't declared. I mean,
And
if you're bringing
worse.
some sort of weapon, sure, with radiation, I don't know if you're going to declare it, or a leak, a
Yeah.
radiation leak. And she said, we need to. So the other thing they do is they compare the manifest with what's actually on the ship. That's why they
Okay.
do these inspections.
Hmm.
She said, could you imagine if we had a large scale disaster in the port where we had to shut it down, we had to clear out everybody? There's the danger to the rest of Central Florida. She said, but not just the life safety threat here, but shutting down the second busiest cruise port in the world. She said, that's on our hands.
And they have to plan for it. They have to have that big book to tell them what to do. Erik, I can't wait to see your story. This sounds so fascinating. Thanks for giving us a little
Thank you, Erik.
teaser of it.
Absolutely. Today at 6 o'clock and 7 o'clock, we call it Getting Results, Protecting Our Community. And this segment clearly
I
shows
was
how
going
the
to say
Coast Guard, the
that's like textbook.
MSU, yeah, they are protecting our community.
Fantastic. Erik, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise. Have a great day, everybody.
You too. And okay, so let's talk about a space launch. We were just talking about that and some perfect weather for it. Let's take a look at the 7-day forecast as provided by our Pinpoint Weather team here. Look at that. This is February in Central Florida, and that launch, I believe, is supposed to go at 1:30 in the morning, Thursday morning. And right now, it looks like things are just looking fantastic for it. But take a look at that Super Bowl weekend. 81 degrees for your Sunday afternoon with a low in around 60 degrees. We can do that for a Sunday morning, but then some more rain comes in for Monday and Tuesday. We're not looking ahead that far yet. Things can change, but loving that weekend. That about does it for our Take 6 segment this afternoon. We appreciate you joining us for a couple minutes as we just let our hair down a little bit and just talking some plain talk about what we're working on. Our next newscast on the air and online is at 4 o'clock. We will see you then. Have a great day.